Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you're watching or listening to us. This is the Awesemo NHL DFS Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. On the show with me for the next hour to figure out how many Josh stacks and 150 lineups we should have tonight, our single entry assassin, Joshua Harris. Josh, how you doing, bud?
At least 12 Josh stacks. It's science. 60% of the time it works every time. So
just to let everybody know, I'm not just wearing like a floral gown for no reason. It is Halloween, so I have my Sub-Zero costume. I am Sub-Zero. I think that's a pretty good imitation, actually. I do have to leave that mask off. I don't think the show would go very well if I left that mask on, but happy Halloween out there. Make sure you stay safe this week. Look both ways before you cross the roads, kids. And always bring a flashlight when you go trick-or-treating. If you're watching this show and you're still going trick-or-treating, I think there's probably something wrong with that. Either you're too old to be trick-or-treating or you're too young to be gambling.
The thing is, it's funny because like Sunday, like Halloween is one of the busiest pizza days of the year for us, and I end up delivering. People are like, "Oh, aren't you old to be, trick-or-treating?" I was like, "I got your pizza. I'm not dressed as a pizza."
Josh is in his best pizza delivery uniform, shades of Zach and Miri for anybody that saw.
If you ask nicely, I'll deliver you a big sausage pizza.
Okay, there you go from Josh, a free pizza of some sort from him, I guess. Want to give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Yahoo Fantasy. They are the sponsor for today's show. We're going to be talking about a little giveaway that Yahoo has for Awesemo viewers, for first-time Yahoo players especially. We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but thanks again to Yahoo Fantasy for sponsoring us. Let's go over last night's slate real quick. It was a real weird slate. I looked at the top of the 20 max, and I think the top three were probably cash lineups. Either that or people are playing 6 one-offs as GPP stacks now. So I got to assume a lot of cash lineups got there last night. Obviously not in the bigger stuff, like if you're playing the spooky spin or whatever, I'm assuming people weren't throwing their cash lineups in there.
You'd be surprised with how bad some of those lineups were.
But yeah, I didn't do too well because a lot of the big stacks, I mean, we talked quickly before the show. It looked like, Philadelphia and Minnesota were my late saviors. It looked like Philly was really going to blow the doors off there. A couple goals early on, a couple correlated goals early on for that top line, and then nothing for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that was kind of disappointing. And you needed either Markstrom or Jake Allen, to a lesser degree, Freddie, and Hayden Fleury. If you had those two players, you pretty much just cashed if you put in a bunch of bums in the rest of your lineup. Although Hayden Fleury has been priced, he had 2 goals and 6 shots on goal in the first 6:35 on the ice. I don't know if I would have gotten too much Hayden Fleury. I was going to play Jamie Oleksiak because he got some more minutes on the ice. But yeah, so you needed one of those goalies. You needed Alex Killorn and Hayden Fleury. You had those 3 players, you're cashing no matter who's in the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, that was the other killer too, right? Alex Killorn, he was basically 20% everywhere. He was 25% in the spin. 3-point bonus, gets the 3-point bonus with an assist in the final minute of the game off an Andre Suster goal. And it's like, this has been 2 weeks of DFS. This is what goes on all season long, right? You'll get a guy with a 200-foot, empty net goal that'll put you over the top some nights. And then there are other nights where a guy will donk an assist with 30 seconds left in a blowout to give him a point bonus that's going to shove him to the up top of the leaderboard. That's just kind of the nature of NHL DFS here. One team I want to talk about, I got to talk about my Montreal Canadiens here. Went into San Jose, 4-0 shutout. I want to say, since their lines have settled down the last few games, they seem to have gone with regular line combinations, like the Dvorak line staying together. But they've moved Perreault with Toffoli and Caulfield, and then Suzuki up on the top line with Gallagher. It seems like those line combinations are working out a lot better than they were earlier in the season. I know you probably didn't stay up to watch much of the Montreal San Jose game last night, but are you seeing anything out of the Canadiens that's different from maybe their first couple games of the year that we should be paying attention to, because those guys are still cheap on future slates?
Yeah, it's not like that scene in Austin Powers where the guy gets like run over in slow motion anymore. Like they're actually not getting run over as good. Going forward, like, that Dvorak line is the line we like. They're still super cheap, but like the line that's really started to come on in the past couple of games is the Suzuki line. And, they're good players. So obviously they're not going to be terrible all season. So I think going forward, you can start deploying them again, and which would only help getting lower ownership on the Dvorak line. So when more lines on the same team are going well, it's great for DFS with more options.
Yeah, it's that double-edged sword too, right? It's like, it keeps all the lines at a reasonable ownership, but then, any of those lines can go off on any given night. So it is good. It is good in some senses, not good in some others, but that's enough for last night. Let's go ahead and look at tonight's slate. It's a pretty interesting slate we have tonight. We have 6 games. I'm looking at the lines right now on Pinnacle. The closest game that they have is the Florida Panthers as a minus 179 favorite. New York minus 183, Dallas minus 189. We have Washington over minus 300, Vegas over minus 200. Like a lot of really big favorites here. So that should tell us, like, we'll talk about ownership a little bit later, but I look at our early ownership runs and I see our early ownership on the teams you would expect: Vegas, Washington, New York. How do you handle slates like this where there are so many obvious spots? Like, how do you choose what to fade? Like, because you're a single entry or 3 max guy, so obviously you can't get all these spots in with 6 games. Like, how do you choose like what to fade, what to play? Are there any trends that you look for? How do you approach a slate like this where there are so many massive favorites?
Yeah, especially when there's obvious chalk tonight, like Washington top line has like a 48 total going against the Yotes on back-to-back on the road. It's going to be very hard to fade them tonight. So like if you do throw in like a Washington 1, what I would do is look for some of these low owned spots, some of these underdogs, but they're still good lines, like Ottawa 1 coming in under owned. Like Dallas Stars, yeah, they're favored, but they're not world beaters. The Blackhawks are a mess, so I'd probably avoid them. But like you see Carolina, they're back to back. This like in GPPs for sure, like on a back to back, like Carolina has a 3.5 total and they're getting almost no ownership. So like I look to some of these low owned Carolina guys in GPPs. They have a 3.5 total at home against one of the worst teams in the NHL. So there's a lot of chalky spots for like these big favorites, but some of these spots are going overlooked. So, it's fine to jam in some chalk, but there are a lot of good contrarian options that can fill out your lineup to make sure it's not duped.
Yeah. And I think one thing I do when I play, like tonight I'm playing 20 lineups, but when I play one or 3 max, you have to find ways to cut lines. And kind of the way I do it is like, I'll have different rules. So like if there's a team that's, let's say Florida and Detroit are 2 of the higher penalty taking teams. But if they weren't, like if Detroit was a bottom 10 team by penalty taking, then I'd look at Florida and say, okay, if they're only going to get a couple power plays tonight, maybe I don't go to them. So then I cross them off the list. And then I look, Rangers and Columbus. Okay, the Rangers have a high total. How have these lines been playing? Zibanejad hasn't looked great earlier this year. Some of the play driving numbers are down. Okay, maybe then I cross them up. That's kind of what I do. Like you have to look for reasons not to use a line. If you don't want to do that, just play the numbers. Honestly, just look for the best, the highest projections and just go with what fits. Because I think one thing we talk a lot about ownership, but one thing I want to mention real quick before we get to the slate. On a slate this small, there's only going to be so many spots that score, right? This isn't basketball where you're pretty much assured that every team's going to get at least like 80 points or whatever, like something like that, right? Where there's going to be some value probably on every team. Half these teams tonight probably won't have anybody that's worth, having in a top 5 roster or top 10 roster or something like that, right? So I think people sometimes get caught up too much in ownership and trying to get cute and not enough in just going with the best plays. Because like if Vegas 2, like we have Vegas 2 a very high own tonight. If they completely smash this slate, it doesn't matter what else you have, you're going to lose, right? So like, do you have any other little quick tidbits about ownership on a small slate like this?
Yeah, and like unless you're building a cookie cutter 4-3-1 in a small field, I don't think you really have to concern yourself with ownership. I think you just got to play the best plays. I know that sounds incredibly simple, but like it really is. Like I can't even tell you a couple seasons ago how many times I swapped off better plays because I was concerned about ownership. If I'm, having a one-off center instead of like a one-off defenseman and have a different build or like a 5-2-1, I put no stock into ownership. I just build the best plays because five mans are unique. You're going to get a two-man that's unique. You're going to get a one-off that's unique. So unless you're building cookie cutter lineups in a small field, I try not to worry about ownership. The one thing I would say in these big field GPPs, if you're making 150, I would, try to avoid just like going all in on the chalk, like chalk on chalk on chalk. But like in these, other than that, because like if you're making 150, I think you make a rule to say, let's make some lineups that aren't cookie cutter 4-3-1s. Let's make some 5-2-1s. Let's make some onslaught stacks, some 3-3s with uncorrelated defensemen, stuff like that. So if you're just not the way you build is more important than ownership, in my opinion. So you can play the high owned guys, but as long as you construct your lineup in a different manner than normal, it's fine.
I think that's probably the best piece of advice we've given out today so far. It's how you build your lineup, not necessarily which players you use. I like that. That's really good advice. All right, we do have a slate to get to, so let's get this moving. While everybody is here, if you guys could give us a like and a subscribe, especially that subscription, really helps us grow this channel. I see 75 people watching and only 15 thumbs up, so if you guys could click a few more thumbs to help us out. And then once you've hit that subscription button, click the notifications so you can get alerts when our shows go live. We have lots of free premium tools and data up on the website if you want to check us out as well. We have NBA ownership projections for tonight. We have NFL Week 8 top stacks. So if you're playing some NFL week this weekend, we have our top stacks up. We have MMA fighter rankings for tomorrow. We have our NHL player projections for tonight as well. And if you're playing NBA DFS, don't miss Adam Scherr's deep dive article, which is the most in-depth free NBA DFS article. So head on over to awesemo.com to check that out. And we should probably be getting Adam to pitch in with an NHL article once in a while. I think he had a decent night in the NHL last night. I know he took down some of our guys in head-to-heads at least as well. So good stuff with Ship My Money there. All right, let's get to these games. Our first game is probably one of the more interesting games on the entire slate, I think. We have the Florida Panthers with a 3.4 implied goal total going into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 2.6 implied goal total. Surprisingly, the ownership is relatively in check here. I thought Florida would end up being probably like one of the chalky spots on the night. We do have the top line in double digits, but considering it's a 6-game slate, I don't find that, I don't find 14% particularly egregious. Florida 2, obviously very popular line here between you and I. But I think there's some stuff on the Detroit side to like as well. So why don't you take us through this game, Josh?
Yeah, I like Detroit one, and what's really drawing me to that is the ownership. It's not like, oh yeah, I love playing the Wings against one of the best teams in the NHL, but you see their ownership, it's 1%. And what the Wings tend to do at home is not put Larkin out against top comp. So maybe he gets a shift or two against Barkov. Maybe he sees some time against Bennett, but for the most part, he's probably going to go out against E2, D2 and, Jumbo Joe. So, not saying that they're overly weak because the Florida Panthers are a weak team, but if you can get a top line fully correlated on the power play at home for 1%, I think in GPPs, even in like 5 to 10 lineups, you can consider it because there's so many chalky spots like the Wings are going to go overlook tonight. And then on the Florida side, like this ownership isn't very high at all. I like the top line for sure. I like the second line for sure. The thing is, like, coming into the season, once you got past the Larkin line, I thought the Detroit depth was going to be absolutely terrible. They're actually okay defensively. They're not awful. So I guess maybe that's what's keeping down the ownership a bit, but like the Panthers just look amazing to start the season. Yeah, their coach got deservedly canned, but the lines are still intact. So that top line is fine. The second line is fine. You want a power play stack, that is also fine.
Yeah, I think the power play stack for me is the big one out of this game because these are two of the more penalized teams in the NHL, right? There are only 5 teams in the league taking more than 4 penalties a game, and these are 2 of those 5 teams. So I think some sort of Florida power play stack really does make a ton of sense here tonight if you are concerned about that Florida ownership or Florida 1 ownership at all. Just going with some sort of power play stack here makes a lot of sense. If you're telling me Barkov and Huberdeau and those guys are going to get 4 or 5 power plays tonight, even if Detroit's penalty kill is better than last year, it's not elite. And a non-elite penalty kill against Barkov 4 or 5 times in a night, yeah, I'll take that. So, yeah, Florida 1 definitely high on my list for me tonight, especially where they're coming in at the ownership that they are lower than a line like Rangers 1. Like, I get that there's pricing differences and that's factored into it, but the pricing isn't enough for me to like Florida, to like the Rangers that much more. And we'll talk about them later. So yeah, I'm just backing on Florida 1. That top line just has been good, really good again this year. Like there's 3.3 expected goals in their entire sample. I think they're approaching 4 actual goals actual goals scored on the ice. You're right about the Detroit depth being better. I think part of that is a little bit of an overhaul to the blue line. Like, I know we make fun of Nick Leddy, but he's at least a good puck mover. He's a massive upgrade over what they've had there the last 5 years. Moritz Seider has looked great as a puck mover early on. So I think those 2 guys have made a really big difference for them. I just really like that Detroit top line again. Like, we talk about line matching, and not that there's a particularly easy matchup here for against Florida, but if Detroit's going to go into the third, Detroit's top line is often going to go into the third and fourth lines for Florida. That means that you get the second and third pairs quite a bit, right? And you miss that Ekblad-Weegar pairing. So again, I really like that Detroit 1 line. I think, their price is fine. Their numbers are great, like 3.6 expected goals per 60 minutes. Like we talk about expected goals and how a small sample can throw, all those off. But even their shot attempt differential, 64%, that's effing elite. Or 57%, that's still effing elite. You know what I mean? That's great. So I really do like that that Detroit top line here tonight. And like you said, you don't need a lot to get over the field. So in my 20 lineups, I'm absolutely going to have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 Detroit lineups, but absolutely Florida power play is what I'm liking the most out of this game. On the blue line, I talked about Moritz Seider. I don't know if I would use him as a one-off. I think he's just, correlating in power play stacks. His peripherals, like with rookie defensemen, they might be really good with point production. Look at like Makar and Hughes and those guys, but they just don't bring the peripherals. Those tend to come later in the career. So that Seider hasn't done anything in that regard yet. It's not surprising. It doesn't mean he's bad. It's just where he is in his career. So Seider for me is only in correlated stacks. I think I might be going back to Forsling just because some of these Florida defensemen are getting way too expensive for me. Don't mind good ass for 2,800 either. What do you think about the blue liners here?
A good ass. We love a good ass here at Awesemo. But yeah, Gustav Forsling, yeah, he's coming off a 3-assist game, but you take that away, he's still playing 22, 23 minutes a night under 4K with peripherals. I think he's a guy that I'm looking to play tonight. If you're power play stacking and you can fit Ekblad in, I think you can. Weegar is a bit too expensive for my taste, so I'd probably go Ekblad and power play stacks, Forsling as a one-off, and if you need salary relief, Radko Gudas. But on the Detroit side, outside of Moritz Seider and a Detroit 1 stack, I'm going to pass.
All right, I'm going to get your opinion real quick on Thomas Greiss because 7,200 at home. We have him for the 3rd most projected saves on the slate. That's kind of appealing to me.
Yeah. And, at that price, we always talk about it. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but if you see shot volume and you're that cheap and you don't even have to win to pay off the price. If he sees 40 shots and saves, 38 of them and the Panthers win 2-1, that's probably an unlikely scenario in a 6 total. But like, even if Greiss loses and gets the shot bonus, you still can win with him.
I mean, I forget the goalie, but it happened a couple nights. Oh, was it Lankinen? Yeah, it was Lankinen. A couple nights ago was in the winning lineup in the $15, I believe. in a losing effort in overtime. That's just what happens when you see enough shot volume. So
It's the only arbitrary bonus that I really like on DK is the saves bonus. The points
Yeah.
bonus, it is what it is, because like secondary assists are kind of like, meh, but like goalies, their main purpose is to save shots. So like giving them a bonus makes some sense.
And it does bring those worst goalies into play, right? Because like, on a 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have played Kevin Lankinen tonight going into Carolina, but now I would, right? Anyways, we'll get to that game in a little bit. Let's get to this next game. We got to talk about Josh's Rangers, of course. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets going into New York. Columbus has a 2.4 implied goal total. The New York Rangers have a 3.1 implied goal total. The Rangers are reassembling their second line, Strome, between Panarin and Kakko. It was a line that looked good early in the year for their first couple of games, but then Kakko had been hurt. It's his first game back in the last 4, I believe. So we'll see how that goes. Chris Kreider and Barclay Goodrow to the top line with Mika Zibanejad. As I mentioned, our top stacks has the Rangers as fairly high owned. We have both the first and second line between 15 and 17%, which gives, 1 in 3 lineups, somebody in the Rangers top 6. Like, I don't find that egregious ownership, but I don't think this is really a great spot either. Why don't you talk us through this game, Josh?
Yeah. I'm just thinking in my head right now that Barclay Goodrow is not Pavel Buchnevich, and I got really sad. But the Rangers' right wing depth is awful. Chris Drury, let's go here. But no, that second line of Panarin, Strome, Kakko, before Kakko got hurt, it's a good line. And I actually like that Alexis Lafreniere got away from Zibanejad and Kreider, because when it was Lafreniere, Zibanejad, and Kreider, those numbers were terrible. Lafreniere is going to get some softer matchups playing with Philip Hedl and Sammy Blais. I think, for development purposes, it might not be the worst thing. But for me, I see Mika Zibanejad 20%, Kreider 16%, Barclay Goodrow 14%. Yeah, Goodrow is cheap, and it brings down the cost of that line, but I'm not enthusiastic about playing that line. If I'm going to play a line from the Rangers tonight, it's going to be Panarin, Strome, Kakko. You get Panarin, Strome, power play 1, Kaapo Kakko, 3,100. Power play 2, they're just a better line. Yeah, they're second in the lineup builder, but I just, Panarin's their best player. Kaapo Kakko is their legitimately only top 6 right winger in the organization right now. Kreider's out of place. Everyone else is out of place. So that second line is where I'm going to, concentrate for the Rangers. And then on the Blue Jacket side, there's no ownership here. And the Rangers, they're not great defensively. Adam Fox is great. Igor is maybe already a top 5 goalie in this league. But if either of them are slightly off and they're not playing at their best, there's nothing there. They're not a great defensive team. The Zibanejad line, not very good defensively. Strome, Panarin, Kakko, as good as they are defensively, they have okay numbers defensively. The kids on the third line, not very good defensively. That fourth line is, a who's who of what not to do defensively. So there's stuff to like on this Blue Jacket side. This top line's coming in at 2%, fully correlated on the power play line. Jenner, Voracek. That's a line that I'm interested in attacking the Rangers. Also, the 2-man of, Roslovic, Borkstrand. Yeah, I'm not a huge Roslovic guy. He doesn't get top power play time, but they're fairly expensive, so it's going to be super contrarian. And Bjorkstrand, top power play 1% at 6,400. He's an expensive one-off, but I think you can do it. So there are some things that I really like GPP wise for the Blue Jackets tonight, and Rangers 2 is where I'm looking for the Rangers. And I forgot to mention that I would be interested in a 2-man of Hedl, Lafreniere, just because they're going to see the bottom 6 of the Blue Jackets. And as you keep telling everyone, bottom 6 of the Blue Jackets, bad.
Yeah, that's where I want to start, actually, because that's where my interest is in this game in particular. It's the third lines on both sides, actually. You mentioned Hedl and Lafreniere going into the third lines from Columbus, third and fourth lines. Columbus's depth, you just have to look at their numbers on Natural Stat Trick. I have them all written out, but it's pretty bad. No one in Columbus's bottom 6 is over 50% shot share, and no one outside the top line is over 48% in expected goal share. So, we talk about the wonkiness of expected goals, so we'll see how that goes. But the shot share or shot attempt share immediately kind of tells a story. Now, that being said, Max Domi looks like he's back tonight and on the third line for Columbus. He's not great defensively, but he's a pretty good playmaker. And Cole Sillinger and Gustav Nyquist, I thought at times have looked fine this year. So I think it's a situation where it's a good matchup for both third lines because I don't think either third line is going to be very good defensively. So it's one of those situations where I do like Rangers too. I'm probably going to have some of them, but I think this is the spot where I'm going to dump down because we always talk about it that in higher owned spots it's fine to dump down to third lines. And the Rangers being one of the higher owned spots, I think it's fine to dump down to the third line here. And I think it's fine to do the same on the Columbus side. So, Domi at 5,700 on DK is an absolutely absurd price. So you can leave him off. But you can three-man Sillinger, Bean, and Nyquist for like $8K. You know what I mean? And that gets you that secondary power play exposure. Now you can make any sort of Washington stack or whatever, or Carolina stack, wherever else you want. So I like the third lines in particular here. Lafreniere, Hedl, Sillinger, and Nyquist. Those are the pairings that I like. You can match Lundqvist with the Hedl and Lafreniere. You can match Bean with Sillinger and Nyquist if you want to get some additional PP exposure. But that's where I'm looking. So I'll have a little bit of Rangers too. Agree with you there. But in a small sample, Nyquist and Sillinger, almost 3 expected goals per 60 minutes. That's just fine for me. So I'll take a chance on a small sample. I'm going to be looking at the third lines here in both games. On the blue line, I kind of do like Bean for 3,500. Keandre Miller all the way down to 2,500. 2 weeks ago, I would have been super excited about that, but it's been kind of an uneven season for him so far. So what do you think about the defenseman in this game?
Yeah, Bean is fine. Trouba, I think, 4,400 is an okay price for him. Lundqvist, if you're, using that third line, I'm not super enthusiastic about, Werenski and Fox paying their price. Like, Fox is a great actual hockey player, not the best DFS player because he's more reliant on hitting the score sheet than peripherals. Werenski plays a ton of minutes, so I guess, if you have the space, he's okay, but I think I would look elsewhere.
Yeah, I like that too. In net, I don't know that I particularly like either of these goalies. Like, shot volume is something that I think should be a genuine concern for this game. Do you like either goalie here? I know Igor's probably somebody that sticks out for very good reason, but anybody else? I mean, there's only one other goalie.
Yeah, I mean, Merzlikins is a fan favorite of mine, but I think I would leave it to correlated stacks for Merzlikins and Shesterkin. I think I can consider him in all formats just because, yeah, shot volume might be a concern for Columbus, but once you get past the Fox pairing, there's not much there. So I think Igor is a decent play as a one-off.
All right. Yeah, I don't mind Igor as a one-off. I mean, I really don't mind any goalie as a one-off. Like, I'm not going to say you have to correlate your goalies at all times. I use one-off goalies all the time. I use one-off Markstrom last night. Didn't help me win any money, but I did use them. That's kind of the way it goes. Get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including our player projections, ownership projections, our premium Discord channel, lineup builder, and a whole lot more. If you're a new user to Awesemo Plus Platinum, then you can take advantage of the promo code we have for the show, which is NHL Strategy Show, all caps, all one word. That's NHL Strategy Show for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You can find the link to activate this coupon in the description of the video below. Of course, if you're only looking to play NHL DFS, you can sign up for one of our Awesemo Plus NHL packages for as low as $3.95 per week. Stop guessing, start winning, and join Awesemo Plus today. That's promo code NHL Strategy Show, all caps, all one word, for new users looking for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And if you want to check out, we talked about premium content and tools a little earlier. If you want to check out what we have on the site before spending any of your money with us, we do have free premium tools and content up on the site today, like NBA ownership projections, our NFL Week 8 top stacks, our MMA fighter rankings for the card tomorrow, and NHL player projections for tonight. So check us out. if you want to see what we're all about before spending any of your hard-earned cash, but I don't think you'll regret it. Come on over to Awesemo.com. I think you'll enjoy what we have to offer. All right, let's move it along. Let's get to our next game. The jeu de jour, I think this one is Arizona with a 2.1 implied goal total going into Washington. The Caps have a 3.9 implied goal total. Now, despite that 3.9 implied goal total, they're not the highest owned stack of the night. That would belong to Vegas. We'll get to them in a second, but they are over 20%. Injuries here. Nicholas Backstrom's still out. Obviously, TJ Oshie is going to be out as well, and that's moved both Tom Wilson and Connor Sheary to the top power play unit for some reason, and Anthony Mantha moved to the second power play unit. Not sure what's going on there, but Washington 1 is now fully correlated on the power play. So obviously that's a big interest here to us. Not sure how much interest you're going to have in Arizona, but what do you like out of this game, Josh?
I'll start with Arizona. Nothing. Moving to the Caps. I'm really out on the Coyotes tonight. If you want to one-off a cheap guy, go for it. Maybe I'll one-off a defenseman that we'll talk about in a second. But going to the Cap side, I really like this top line. It's fully correlated on the power play. Yeah, it gives me pause plugging in 7,200 Evgeny Kuznetsov into my lineup, but he's been playing consistently over 20 minutes. He plays on the power play. The OV plays even strength with OV. So Coyotes, I know we talk about when I say arguably the worst team in the league, the Coyotes are the worst team in the league. I don't think there is an argument there. So I really like Caps 1. Coyotes are on a back-to-back. They're starting their 5th string goalie instead of their 6th string goalie. So I don't know, change your projections for that. But Caps 1 for me. Caps power play is a big interest to me, especially if you need some salary. You throw in a Connor Sheary there. It's not like he's on the 4th line like our boy Chiasson. Like he's going to see some minutes on this in the top 6 at 2,500. So I think he's a good add-on there. I like the second line. With Nick Dowd being out, Connor McMichael's ice time should be fairly consistent tonight. So I don't mind going to that second line. Their ownership is like 4, 5, 6%. And their power play correlation isn't great, but like they're still going to get even strength time against the Coyotes. So I think in a high total in low ownership, I really like that second line. But for me, Caps 1, Cap power play, Caps 2, nothing on the Yote side.
Oh, you would dare say that about Dmitry Yashkin? Are you kidding me?
I mean, the dude, you mentioned it yesterday about his like expected whatever it was. It translates to 0
DK points. Yeah, their line was 80% expected goals. Like I think after the second period last night, even though they were getting blown out. That's the frustrating part. Is like I still believe in that Larson Yashkin line. Like you either believe in the numbers or you don't. I believe in the numbers, and that that line. At least Yashkin and Larson have been playing well together, and they're on the power play unit together. And it's not like Washington is an elite 5-on-5 defensive team. You know what I mean? The Lars Eller line could probably be pretty good, but now you're without Oshie and now you're without Backstrom, and the top line was a little weak defensively to begin with. Like I'm getting dragged back into playing Yashkin again is what's happening here. The only thing I will say is that I don't think it's really necessary to play Arizona players here tonight, because unless you're game stacking, there's not a lot of like super expensive spots, right? Like there's no Colorado 1, there's no Boston 1. Like there are some expensive like Florida players, there are some expensive Carolina players, but it's not like you're sticking 3 8K wingers into your lineup or something like that, right? Like, so I don't know that you need to go down and spend 8K on a secondary stack like I just talked about in the game before, even with Columbus. So that might be what keeps Yashkin from finding himself into my lineups, at least as a stack, is that I don't think you need to spend all the way down to that price anyway. But we do have them as a 1% top 2 stack percentage. Like it's not like they're nothing. We have them as the same top stack percentage as the Jonathan Taves line. And just behind the Detroit third line, well, I guess the Detroit third line, we have them just behind the Columbus second line. Let's put it that way. We have them at 1.1%, Columbus at 1.7%. It's a sizable gap, but not massive. I think there's a reason to play them if you really need the savings. If you don't, then you don't. Obviously, this is a Washington game. The Washington power play stacks are going to be very popular. The one thing I will say is Arizona, two things about Arizona. One, their penalty kill, atrocious this year. But I think a lot of that is just the goaltending. They're getting literally 667 goaltending on the penalty kill. They're only saving 2 out of 3 shots. Like, that's not going to persist, right? That's going to come up to 850 over the course of the regular season. And they're only taking 2.5 penalties a game. So, like, it's that situation where you're looking for reasons if you're playing 1 to 3 lineups not to play them. I'm playing in 20 lineups. I'm going to be like 30% Washington power play stacks. In 1 to 3, the reason not to play them is that they might not get a ton of power plays. But, by the same token, if you're scoring on like 50% of your shots, a couple power plays can result in a couple power play goals anyway. So I don't think there's any necessity to play anybody from Arizona. But if you are, I would go to the Yashkin line. And of course, on the Washington side, the thing is with that secondary power play stack, Mantha Sprong, Ovechkin plays both power play units. So one of those guys on that second power play unit, whether it's Sprong, whether it's Eller, whether it's Schultz, one of them's not going to get ice time. You know what I mean? So it could be Sprong that doesn't get that power play ice time. So that's the only thing that concerns me. But again, so cheap, you can't get away from it. So I'm just going to stick to the top of the Capitals lineup. Kuznetsov, Wilson, Ovechkin, Karlsson. I'm going to stick with those guys out of this game. Nobody on the blue line sticking out to me. Victor Soderstrom, I guess, if you want to get that PP2 stack in with the Yotes, but I think it's just correlate or bust for me.
Yeah, I like in GPPs, Karlsson makes sense. 5,900, like that price is low. He's having a weird start to the season, and maybe it normalizes as the season goes on. But yeah, Karlsson, that's really about it. Like, nothing on the Arizona side. Like, Jacob Chikrin at 5,700 is too much for me right now. Like, I'd rather get a softer matchup at home with Chikrin on power play 1.
Yeah, him not getting that power play time is a serious bummer right now. All right, we got to move it along. We have partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this NHL season to bring you some great offers. Check out our exclusive limited time offer, which gets you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. To qualify, you need to be new to Yahoo, sign up for an account via the link below, deposit, and play. That's it. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest, and we'll reach out to you with your coupon. If you need immediate access, email support@awesemo.com and we'll get you set up. You can also claim a free $10 below, which can be used to enter any Yahoo contest. Make sure to use our premium DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give yourself the best shot at winning big. And the best part about this site, 12% management fees, whereas other sites you'll be paying 15 or 16% in lower entry stuff. 12%, you save 3% on every dollar you enter. You really, it's just such a great deal that if you're a first-time Yahoo user, you really just want to get your feet wet in DFS, there you go. You can get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum through the link below, and you're playing with lower management fees as well. We're the suckers here, I guess. Moving along, let's get to this next game. An interesting game, I think. Chicago, 2.6 implied goal total going into Carolina. Carolina has a 3.5 goal total. The reason I say it's an interesting game because it is one of those games where Carolina is a massive favorite at home. But we don't see a lot of ownership on them. In fact, we see a lot of spread out ownership. 6% on the top line, 6% on the second line, 5% on the third line. That tells me that people want to use Carolina, and Carolina is probably going to be fairly popular, but it's going to depend on the rest of the person's lineup. Like, people aren't just going out there and jamming in a ton of Carolina 1. Maybe they're going to throw in a Carolina 3 with a Washington 1 or something like that. So just because Carolina is going to be highly owned tonight doesn't necessarily mean their studs are going to be highly owned tonight. So what do you like out of this one, Josh?
Yeah, I was surprised that Carolina is coming in. Like, their top line is around 7%, and I thought it was going to be way higher. Yeah, they're back-to-back, but they're at home. They're getting the Blackhawks, who are just an absolute mess right now. Kane is still in protocols. Their whole team should be in protocols for different reasons, but we're not going to get into that now. There's not enough time. Top line, I like going back to them at 7% in GPPs. Cash, I'm a cash game player now, even though I played GPPs last night. In cash, I have no Canes. I just think there's better cash spots. But in GPPs, Carolina 1 fully correlated on the power play. Yeah, they're expensive. Like, that is a reason probably why they're going to be on the lower owned side, but there's so much value tonight that I think you can get them in fairly easily, fully correlated on the power play, like I said. So I really like this spot. I do also like the second line, Kotkaniemi, Netchis, Trocheck. If you want to, do like a 3-man, a Kotkaniemi, Netchis, Pesci for, 3-man power play too. I think that is a way to get a bit different. So yeah, I like all three lines here tonight. Like, but you see the ownership on this third line, like 5-6%. Like, if they're going to come in around 5-6%, I'd rather just go up to the second or the top line for a couple percentage points more. So I think I'm going to avoid Carolina 3. So I'm going to focus on the top 6. And then on the Blackhawks side, it's just really impossible to stack the Blackhawks. They can give you lines, but they aren't going to be the lines by the end of the second period. So like, there aren't many combinations that feel safe. Like if you want to one off a Kubalik or one off a Kirby Doc or like DeBrincat feels like a safe one off and Kubalik feels like a safe one off. But other than that, like I don't even feel comfortable like pairing anyone together. Like Doc, Kubalik, they could be on separate lines, or Hagel, Tays. Like there's just nothing that I feel comfortable, stacking. So I think I'd just, outside of a DeBrincat or Kubalik, I'm probably going to be out on the skaters. There are some guys on the blue line that I like, but this is a Carolina game for me.
Yeah. When you said, why play Carolina 3 at 4% when you play Carolina 1 at 6%, like that just sums up the whole game to me. Like, I'm not going to say don't play Carolina 3. Obviously, like if you have a Washington power play stack and Carolina fits in well with them and you like your lineup, yes, go play them. It's just, obviously, I think Carolina 1, Carolina 1 is in one of the best leverage spots, I think, of the entire season for us. Like their leverage is 15.5%, 22% top 2 stack, only 6% ownership. Like even if that ownership comes up to like 10% or 11%, I'm still fine with that. Chicago has looked like you think Arizona's the worst team in the league. I think it's Chicago, like honestly, especially with all these injuries. So where Carolina's top line has just been phenomenal, like 2.9 expected goals per 60 minutes, extremely high shot rate. I think their shot attempt rate is at like 70 per 60 minutes. It's just absurd. So yeah, love that Carolina top line. If you play any of the Carolina lines, I think I'm not going to say no because it's going to depend on the rest of your lineup. But I genuinely like Carolina 1 genuinely for me is at the top of my list for priority tonight. So that's where I'm going. On the Chicago side, I think you can PP stack, I think is the one thing you can do here because, and I say that because there are just so many injuries and guys out of the lineup. There are only so many players left to put on the top power play unit. So like, I feel relatively safe saying like Tays and DeBrincat are going to be on the top power play unit. Like Tays and Kubalik are going to be on the top power play unit. So Carolina is one of the most penalized teams in the NHL, and it is a back-to-back. So maybe Chicago does get a ton of power plays here tonight. If I'm in a single entry, I'm not putting Chicago power plays by one stack, but I'm 20 maxing tonight. So I'll probably have 1 or 2 lineups with some sort of Chicago power play stack in them. But yeah, for me, it's all about Carolina 1 the most in this game. On the blue line, is there anything you're doing outside of correlating? Like, is there a guy that you might want off in particular?
On the Chicago side, I like Connor Murphy at 3,400. I like Calvin DeHaan at 3,100. I think, if you need a guy in that range to block some shots, have some peripherals, I think those are the guys. On the Carolina side, Tony DeAngelo, 5,200, only in power play stacks. But like that 4-man power play stack is going to be so low owned, and it's something I would definitely want to get a piece of in GPPs. But other than that, I don't think I'd be one-offing anyone else.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention, I know our Discord earlier talked about Connor Murphy's block rates. I'm not super concerned here. His ice time, it's within a minute of last year. And if you look at some of the teams they played recently, Detroit, Vancouver, the Islanders, those aren't like super high octane offenses. So I don't see him as having a ton of opportunities to block shots in those games. Carolina's going to be firing the puck at the net tonight. I think Connor Murphy does stand a decent chance of the block bonus. In net, does Blankinen or Ranta stick out to you? I mean, Ranta at 8K is not too bad.
Yeah, I'm the biggest Ranta slappy there is, but I like him tonight. I like Lankinen too, 7,100. Going to see a ton of shots, so I think either are viable. Lankinen GPP only though. Don't be putting Lankin in your cash lineup. If you are, JRH002 is my name on DK. Please send me some
yeah. Please do not put the blanket in your cash game lineups. If you're playing in GPPs tonight, you might be able to find your way into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Josh has been trying all season. He'll get there eventually. If you want to get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, this is all you have to do. Download the Awesemo avatar from awesemo.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants and tweet the wins to the Awesemo Hoff account on Twitter. That's Awesemo, HOF, all one word. You can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum just by doing this. Now, you can only win 1 free month per year. You can't keep winning a free month every year if you keep winning big. But we do have the Awesemo Hall of Fame. You'll see it up on your screen right now. I mean, we have guys, we had a 6-figure hit in basketball not long ago. I know we had a 5-figure hit in hockey a couple days ago, but it doesn't have to be 5 and 6-figure hits. You know, I see one person here finish second in what looks like a showdown. Like, we celebrate those as well. So as long as you guys are placing top 3 in a contest with at least 5,000 contestants, just hit us up. Awesemo Hoff. You can get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. You can get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We love celebrating our winners. It doesn't matter if it's $100 or $100,000. We will celebrate you here at Awesemo. So get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame and be better than Josh.
It won't be very hard to be better than me.
All right, let's get to our next game. We have the Anaheim Ducks with a 2.2 implied goal total. They're going into Vegas. The Vegas Golden Knights have a 3.4 implied goal total. Anaheim just played last night. Something I want to mention out of that game, they got down 3-0, changed around their lines, and then came back and tied it 3-3. That means I think they're going to change around their lines tonight. And their lines last night, if anybody wasn't paying attention to that late game, oh boy, did those lines get ugly towards the end of the night. They had Trevor Zegras between Sonny Milano and Nick Delorier. Ryan Getzlaf between Troy Terry and Adam Henrique, which kind of looks playable. And then the third line is Sam Steele, Isaac Lundestrom, and Jacob Silfverberg. That also kind of looks playable, maybe. And then the fourth line didn't even see the ice. Max Comtois played like 8 minutes. The fact that they changed their lines and made a 3-goal comeback tells me that they're not going to go back to their old lines. But again, we just don't know because we won't know their lineup until warmups hit. So how are you treating this game, Josh?
I'm treating it like I wish it wasn't on the slate. Like, I see Vegas won here at 35% ownership, and it makes me want to throw myself down a flight of stairs. Like, I've talked about it almost every slate that they're on, that I think they're always over-owned because they're always cheap, and I don't want to play them for that reason. But it's like the Ducks, you know, it's the Ducks. Like, they've looked pretty bad so far this season. I think I'm going to be well underweight on Vegas 1. I know it's 3.4 total. They're at home. The Ducks lines are a mess, but like, I just can't get behind them at that ownership.
I mean, they also saved John Gibson for this game too.
Yeah, right? And you know, if you've ever watched a show with me on, you know, I love John Gibson. Like, he should be the Team USA goalie when they go to the Olympics. And if you don't agree with me, we can have a gentleman's argument on twitter.com. But Vegas won at that ownership. I'd rather go to Carolina's. I know there's price differences, but like, I'd rather go to Carolina. I'd rather go to Washington. I'd rather play Rangers second line. I'd rather play the Panthers. I'd either rather play the Detroit top line, like, at that low of ownership compared to this high ownership on Vegas. So I think, I'm not going to tell you not to play them because obviously they're high owned for a reason. This is a very good spot, but I'm just going to be off them and hope they don't bury me in GP. Like, cause like at 35%, if they bust and you're making 20 lineups and you have very little, you're ahead of 35% of the field. So I think you got to plant your flag here on I would plant my flag here on fading Vegas 1. On the Anaheim side, Getzlaf, Terry, 2-man, not too bad. Steele if Steele, Silfverberg, Lundestrom were at home, I think I would like if this was at home and they weren't back to back. I think I'd have a little bit of interest in that Getzlaf line, a little bit of interest in that Lundestrom line. But just because like it's back to back on the road, I think I'm going to be very, very light. Like maybe I'll have, if I was building 20, I'd have like 1 in 20 on, Anaheim 2 or 1 in 20 at Anaheim 3. But for me, like I'm interested in playing John Gibson tonight.
I mean, the problem with Anaheim too, right, is we're just assuming they're going to stick with those lines. Maybe they go back to their old lines. Maybe they just do something completely different. Like we just don't even know what the lines are going to be. And where this game starts, you're only going to have a couple. It's only going to be that game or the next game we're going to talk about to pick from. So it's not like last night where you could wait until, or a couple nights ago when Rantanen was possibly out. You could wait till 9 o'clock and then there's like 5 games coming up after that where you could choose from. You can't do that tonight. So yeah, maybe Anaheim one-offs. Like Vegas, we have about 36% ownership on that Vegas line and then 10% on the next line and then like 4% or 3% on the line after that. We have 1 out of every 2 lineups tonight having some sort of Vegas stack in it. That's where ownership to me matters. And that's where like John Gibson is probably going to be one of my favorite goalies tonight, because if John Gibson has a John Gibson game, you're ahead of half the field immediately. So like John Gibson's probably my favorite goalie on the entire slate tonight. I'm not going to say no to Vegas, but another thing with Vegas, they changed up their lines last game too as well. Jonathan Marchessault was moved off the line with William Karlsson and Riley Smith. So is that line even going to be better tonight? I'm assuming they start the game. But if they, if Anaheim gets up 1-0, it's 1-0 at the end of the first period. Vegas is probably changing their lines for the second period. So again, like, I think this is a game where I'm just choosing some one-off forwards, maybe some one-off defensemen. I'm not stacking anything out of this. I agree with you. Yeah, like I said, John Gibson, my favorite goalie. What do you think? 7K John Gibson?
Oh, I love John Gibson tonight. He's going to be low owned. He's going to see volume. This is, not the Vegas team that went to the Stanley Cup a couple seasons ago. They have holes. I really like John Gibson. On the blue line real quickly, I love Alec Martinez tonight, power play 5,400 on DraftKings.
Yeah, perfect. All right, we got a few minutes left. We got one more game to get to before we get out of here. I see lots of people in the show. Actually, we're well over 100, still only 57 likes. Come on, click that thumbs up for us and click the subscribe button as well. We're approaching 65,000 subscribers, and the more subscribers we get, the more often we can bring these shows. And we do have more shows coming up in just a little bit. We have the Yahoo NFL Sunday Pick Show with Adam and Eric, and then the Prize Picks College Football Show at 5 p.m. Eastern, followed by the NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock from 4:45 Eastern right until NBA Lock. So we got you covered for NFL, college, and NBA following this show. All right, one last game to get to. Ottawa 2.4 implied goal total. Going into Dallas, Dallas has a 3.2 implied goal total. All of Dallas's prices came up. All of them came up. Their defensemen, their forwards. I mean, Joe Pavelski is the one that stands out because his price came up by like $3,000. Yeah. But all the prices came up for all these players. So Dallas is a lot more expensive than they were just a few days ago. You and I kind of both like that Ottawa top line. What do you think about this game, Josh?
Yeah, there's a couple things that draw me to the Ottawa top line. One, the Stars send out their older players like Sagan, like 20, 21 minutes a night. They play their good players like 12, 13 minutes. Like Hintz's number, like minutes is way down. Others are way down. And the other thing is like Braden Holtby has like a 960 save percentage to start the season. That's not sustainable. Like eventually the dam's going to break there. This Ottawa top line coming in around 5-6%, fully correlated on the power play. I really like them tonight. Even that second line's okay. Their power play correlation isn't great, but I don't mind using them. They're super low owned. They're coming in under 1%. So I like the Sens side in this game.
Yeah. Jake brings up a very good point in our chat. The Radek-Faksa line usually takes top lines when Dallas is at home. And the Radek-Faksa line can be a very tough line for a very tough matchup for other lines going in. Here's my counterpoint. Ottawa 1 kicks ass, Jake. So I'm going to be playing Ottawa 1. No, but seriously, Ottawa 1, their numbers this year are just absurd. Over the course of their entire careers, I think like almost 300 minutes, like we're looking at 2.9 expected goals for per 60 minutes. That's just a crazy number. Dallas hasn't looked as good as they have last year. Like They've been moving, like they don't have Andrew Cogliano anymore. And Cogliano, I think, was a big part of that shutdown line as well. I think it's worth the risk, even in a single entry, to go with a perfectly correlated Ottawa top line here tonight. They aren't super expensive, so you can fit other spots in. I just really like them. So it's Ottawa for me. Don't mind the Hintz and Pavelski line on the other side for Dallas either. So I'm looking at both top lines here tonight. Nothing other than correlating for defenseman, Josh?
Yeah, Artie Zub, the man, but 5,100 still a bit crazy. So yeah, I'm just correlating.
All right. We got to get out of here. Once again, thank you very much to our sponsor, Yahoo Fantasy. Josh, I'm going to ask you for your goalie and your hat trick pick. My favorite goalie on the entire slate tonight is John Gibson, and my hat trick pick is Andrei Svechnikov. Who do you got?
Gibson and Ranta and Igor. And my hat trick pick is Slippin' Sammy Bennett.
There we go. Slippin' Sammy Bennett and Andrei Svechnikov are your hat trick picks for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. There's not going to be a show tomorrow for Saturday because there is just a chock full of slate of MMA, NFL, and college and all that stuff. So we'll be back, I think, on Tuesday for your show. Until then, good luck and happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.